Hi, in this video I want to talk about having the right to deal with consequence and how that's all we're doing. We don't have a right to do much of anything but to deal with the consequence. Looking at it that way, obviously all we're doing is dealing with consequence in life and the game that we're playing, getting more comfortably speaking, dealing with those consequences, depending on how much momentum you have. But it's based off of this momentum, obviously, and the way it's connected. It's a sequitur or non sequitur. Anyway, I don't know, but based on that, we all have a right to deal with the consequences, but the consequences only matter when there's a thing to deal with the consequences that can feel the consequences, and consequences are often dealt with feelings, how we feel and how we interact with the environment. But the consequences to us only mean something because we feel those consequences. We all have a right to deal with the consequences, but we only have so much control over the things that are going to happen. Things are going to happen a certain way, and we have the control, but based on the fact that there's all this interaction, regardless of another human being or another living being existing or not, something's going to cause interaction. If you're existing in a world of consequence, an existence of consequence, regardless of another human being there being around or another being around to impose on you. Now it's just left up to chaos controlling you, and obviously it's about making um, controlling mechanism in the state of chaos, because that's what we are, human, the mechanism that we're existing. It's still a chaotic mechanism. It's still beyond our control, regardless. It's still consequence, regardless of someone else being there. But us controlling it is just a controlled mechanism in chaos. But it's generally speaking the same thing. Only there's motivation, and motivation can in a way offset the chaos. There's nothing, no one else. Sort of like being alone or having someone else with you. It's either dealing with the consequences of someone else being with you, but them coming to your aid, or no one else being there, but you're left on your own, and if something happens, no one there's to help you. It's about understanding that catch-22. And that's the thing. We're all living on a catch-22. We're living a base of consequences based off of a logical set of events that exist. Psychologically understanding, emotionally, or understanding something that exists objectively in reality. And understanding those differences. But yeah, I mean, it exists, and all we're doing is dealing with the consequences of the actions that happen, regardless of someone else being there or not. A controlled mechanism of chaos, controlling and the chaos, all it is, regardless, is just motivation at that point. Motivation, existing, living things being, more living things being a victim, regardless of controlled chaos or not. It's just more things being a victim of the chaos mechanism. That's all they are. They're more of a detriment than anything. More people is more of a detriment. When in reality, why have someone help you when you can just end it? The last known thing to have to exist when someone else is there to help you. It's just continuing the game anyway. So what's the point, right? You almost ask the reason why. Continue the game, have someone there to help me. And why? What's the point when it's just going to continue the game and allow for something else to happen? It could be better, but guess what? If you didn't exist or you let it end your existence, then there wouldn't have any more fighting. So it's all a pointless fighting uphill battle game regardless, and even if you're in a bad state, you might as well take it once it's already happened, so you don't have to redo the same thing or take the chance. And the chance only exists because you're alive. But the bad shouldn't happen. It's about weighing those the goods and the bads that you have to go through, and realizing that something could happen this way or that way or the other way, and yeah, that's the way things are existing. Understanding consequence. We're all victims of consequence, and there's only so much we can do, regardless. We're the only one, or there's other motivation, other more living things being victims. That's all there is when you have more. When you have more, you want to be part of the more. If there's nothing else for you to do, you want the help. It's about weighing those decisions, but those decisions are to be made once there's more than one being. Almost in a forced circumstance to do that. But to make that decision at the very least. Man, my throat's getting dry. But anyway, that's the fundamental mechanism. We all have to deal with consequence regardless. We're all victims of that kind of circumstance, dealing with consequence, because regardless of what it is, if you're living in a world, there's consequence. There's always consequence regardless of us. But like I said, the consequence we apply is constant consequence of feeling. And that's all it needs is one living thing to have that feeling, give consequence any meaning. Consequence is only given meaning by feeling, and consequence means nothing when it's just things moving around because it's not affecting anything. But if there's just one living thing, consequence can affect the feeling um, of the one living thing. So it's something that's existing regardless. Oh, was it tilted this whole time? That's weird. Anyway, yeah, so that's the way it's working. All dealing with consequence, regardless of the existence of someone else. The consequence exists. And that's a distinction between human, the living form of consequence, at least the human definition form of consequence and recognition of consequence, and the consequence of realizing that consequence is something that objectively exists. It's applying the feeling to the consequence and realizing consequence only means something when it's affecting a feeling thing. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. All it takes is one, though. It just takes one living thing for consequence to mean anything. And you just add a bunch more, it just means more consequence for more people. Just multiply it every time by another one, another one, another one, and another one, and another one, and over and over and over and over again. That's all you're doing. So that's really the whole game that's being played, dealing with consequences. So regardless, that's we all have the right to deal with it. We only have so much control within the consequence, but the consequence is controlling us. The circumstance based on a consequence, there's only so much we can do. But say that we are living in the control mechanism, and the controlling is not what we're controlling, but we're being a fundamental tool, a fundamental piece in the puzzle that's causing this non-stop mechanism to continue rolling, unless we decide to change that. The consequence is still going to exist. We only change the fact that it's a feeling thing being a victim of that consequence. So there's only so much we can do, but we have to do it and the best we can. And even though we can't break the fundamental aspect of reality, we can break the victims of that fundamental aspect of reality, and that's the ultimate goal. That's sad truth, but it's the only way to work it. Even if it's not an issue to you, it's something that's a problem that exists regardless. Even if you don't want to accept it as an issue, even if that baby or whatever is over there crying in pain, or whatever it may be, the person is over there crying in pain, and you decide to ignore it, or you're ignoring it, and you don't recognize it, doesn't mean it's not a problem to be worth. It isn't a problem on its own. It's still a problem. It's something that's existing. It exists, and that's a problem in and of itself. Sort of like something existing, but it only means something when someone else is being a victim of it, a living creature, or for someone to recognize it. Therefore, you're a victim, and not only that, but you recognize it. You can get it from both points of view. Not only do you recognize it when you're living, but you're able to be a victim. Therefore, whatever consequence means something, regardless of what you say or what you believe. It means something because it affects you, regardless of how much meaning you put behind that effect. But it is still ethereal. It's still a very thin air thing. But regardless, that's all I need to say on the subject, and there's nothing else much to say. Anyway, that's all I need to say. So thank you, and until next time. If there's anything else to say, there's always another time, another place. Same place, another time.